Merry meet and welcome. Today we're going to be taking on technically a level 1 recipe. I'm going to pronounce it as best as I can. It's Pão de Queijo. No idea if I pronounced that right or not. It is Brazilian cheese buns though. And yeah, so I don't have tapioca flour. I thought I did. We're just going to use all-purpose flour and hope that everything just works out. But as always, we have that there, and then we're going to mix our salt in. Okay. And then we're gonna just put that aside. Don't really need to worry about that. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and combine our cheese and eggs, even though they aren't necessarily cheese or eggs. We're going to be using a flaxseed egg for this one, or eggs I should say. So I didn't grind them enough, if I'm being honest, but it is still getting a little bit of that viscosity that we really want. Fun fact too, if you grind flaxseed and you boil it, you can get a eco-friendly hair gel as well. That's really good for most curl types. Anyways, and then we don't have Parmesan, but nutritional yeast is notoriously a good Parmesan replacement. So it definitely is probably, they meant more like freshly grated Parmesan versus like what you see in a pizzeria kind of situation. But we have about a cup here, so we'll just see how it goes. It's going to be cheesy. It adds some protein, which that's what normal cheeses do anyway. And then we have some just like cheddar shreds from BioLife. So I don't have, and I couldn't find a replacement for a round of queso fresco. And it said like if you need to replace it, try to find aged white cheddar. Also not something I could find, so we're just going straight for cheddar. So I am not trying to be disrespectful. I just am trying to be like as easygoing as possible. And then in theory, we're gonna use the whole amount because it calls for 10 ounces and we only have 8. And we're gonna just mix these all together. So some salty, cheesy, nutty. So I think the cheeses that it calls for are like, well, the Parmesan is a little bit of a stiffer cheese, but the queso fresco is notoriously like a crumbly cheese, so it probably would have looked better all mixed together with the egg. But honestly, I think it's doing its part. I think if it was egg, you just wouldn't see and just feel it being clumped together, which is what it's doing. So now what we're gonna do, slash you're not gonna get to see, is we're going to take a cup of milk. So this can be any kind of milk that you already have. It does state that it wants to be full fat, so like if you have coconut milk, just make sure to mix it up because you still want it to be liquidy. Like this isn't one where you would want to have it in the fridge ahead of time. And then we're going to put that to a simmer alongside with the oil in a saucepan. And when you see us come back is when we're going to be mixing that hot milk and oil into our tapioca here. So sorry, it's not tapioca for us, but in the recipe it calls it a tapioca mixture, but for our flour mixture here. Okay, we'll see you in a minute. Merry meet again. Here we are. So I probably let that cool a little bit too much in order to turn on the camera. And then it says with a wooden spoon. I will say sometimes using wooden instruments versus metal, plastic, silicone, just something about wood, that like it may be true, like you need to use a wooden spoon for this, so that's why I'm using one of these. But you may have been able to just use this. Anyway, so we're gonna go ahead. Yep. We're gonna go ahead and mix this as best as we can with our little wooden spoon. So normally like when you're using a cooking wooden spoon, they don't have the scoop. as much as one that you would use, say, to eat with. Okay, but she says it's not going to be a good mixture, like it is gonna look weird. I'm not gonna lie to you, I think it would just be easier at this point to mix it with my hands. But you want the mixture to cool down completely before you add in the cheese mixture. So I'm just using this. It'll also help me know what the temperatures are. She says to wait about 10 to 15 minutes to let it cool. So, and it's not supposed to get much more like homogeneous than this, is kind of how it phrases it. So I'm not trying to get it perfect right now. So I'm gonna go ahead, let this cool, and I'll check in with you guys when we're adding the cheese. Okay, so I needed it a little bit more, but it is cooled to the touch. And we're gonna go ahead and add in our cheese mixture and just see how that treats us. At this point, I mean, it really is just going to come together to be one big bowl of bread and cheese. And isn't that just what we're looking for here? So, as you can see, it's a little bit difficult to just knead the cheese in. That's why I'm squishing it. And you can use a spoon to do this too. This might be terrible for someone who like can't handle this amount of mess. And then she said, even though like it's all gonna come together, and like kind of what we saw with that shaggy dough, but you're still going to be able to see this dough. So honestly, she didn't say necessarily to knead it. So I think this is probably gonna be the best we're gonna get it, because it's starting to get a little tough. That's going to be because we're using AP flour versus tapioca flour, which you don't typically work or need to work. So we're going to... nothing of importance fell. But we're going to go ahead. She does say oil your hands. I already have one hand like messed up, so we're just going to go ahead and go. We're going to turn these into some cheese balls. And then you can... freeze these too for like several months. So if you want to meal prep these instead, you can do that. I think these could be a really fun meal prep item too, especially if like you're missing cheesy buns. I know this is a traditional recipe, but I could imagine adding garlic to it. She says like, I feel like these are big, so I'm just squishing them down a little bit because it's kind of hard to break off a little bit. So, especially because I'm trying not to get it all, just the cheese on the outside. So anyways, we'll go ahead, we'll finish this. I'm obviously making these right now. So we have our oven preheated at 350. And yeah, we'll go ahead and check in with you once we're done getting these in the oven and baked up and for our taste test. Talk to you then. Merry meet again. Here we are with our finished product. I'm actually pretty pleased with it. So you can see for this particular one, I just probably have an issue with getting them golden brown, or maybe I'm impatient. But I checked the middle and they're mostly cheese on the inside, so they were just like gooey, and I don't think that's a bad thing because I've never had this actual dish. I've just seen it in The Sims and you don't really see like anything of it, so I don't know if this is necessarily a success or fail, but it tastes good. It tastes like a super cheesy biscuit. I definitely agree that like putting a garlic would be so good and like bring in more of like those Red Lobster biscuits, you know what I mean? And then the only other thing that I'll say though is these would be so good with the tomato jam. I wish I still had some left over. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll link the video below. But yeah, so I'm gonna say this is a success.
And maybe next time when we like try to remake this, we'll try to figure out a way to get closer to the cheeses and actually have tapioca flour. And yeah, but not bad. See you guys in the next one. Bye.